real question to ask, what is your spending number?
SpaceX.
The excitement is off the charts.
Are we gonna get back to inflation of the 70s? Who taught you how to dance?
I have been fired by 2 different dance instructors. Hello, this is Will Allen with Centera Capital here with Jonathan Brummel, and we have a new format for you today from our normal market updates, more of a conversation, a little more planning focus. And John, let's get into it. How's it going?
It's going great, Will. We had Memorial Day weekend over this past weekend, so it was nice to kind of finally breathe, get some stuff done around the house, but it's also made for a crazy week of just like the planning and all the things that we're doing with the clients, which is fantastic. How was your weekend?
Well, good, but I got to ask, you said you had a chance to breathe. I didn't know you got to do that with 11 kids in the household.
No, not very much.
Not much?
Yeah, so how was your weekend?
It was good. We had one of our youngest boys got some sparklers for Memorial Day, and they had some kind of problem going on and created like 10 times the amount of smoke. And we had like 6 or 8 of us using, and it literally looked like our house was on fire, which neighbors got concerned, and our young one ended up getting some kind of chemical reaction from the smoke later in the evening. And so we had a little mini ER visit the next day. I'm like, are you kidding me? Smoke from sparklers here? What are we doing? But anyway,
gosh.
Yes, it was not a lot of fun. Let's dive in. So we talked about we want this to be planning focused for a lot of these weeks, and that's going to be cool to be able to talk about some of these things. One of the things that both of us have kind of talked about is the number one question that gets asked about retirement is, what's the magic number? What do I need? What number will get me there?
Yeah, so everyone has a magic number, and what's funny is you can sit down with clients and they always are asking, but most clients, they have something in the back of their head. I don't know if it's something, the classic for the longest time was $1 million. Once I'm a millionaire, I can retire. Well, that's all relevant, right? If you're making $500,000 a year, $1 million doesn't last very long, right? But it is kind of funny, like most people have some sort of number in their head. I mean, do you get this asked quite a bit too?
Yeah, so when I did the nonprofit financial classes for basically a 10-year period, we went out over 100 companies. We had Fortune 500, small businesses, other nonprofits. And the last class that I would do there was retirement. And over and over and over, that was the big question people asked. And what you quickly find when you're doing the analysis, when you're running plans for people, is the real question to ask is, what is your spending number? Because I frequently saw people who never made more than $60,000, $70,000 in their life who were in an amazing shape with $500,000 or $750,000. They had Social Security, they were drawing from that, and they weren't spending very much money. They were in a great shape. Meanwhile, other people who made $400,000, $600,000 a year, who wanted 15 grand a month, that's not going to get it done with just having 500,000 or $1 million. And so it's changing the mindset and helping people understand your spending is the real key factor, not some number that sounds good like 500,000 or $1 million.
Right. I mean, I would spend a lot of my time on the bank side as an advisor or private banker, and you'd have people come in. I mean, if you're 65 and you're wanting to retire next year, I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? We're not going out there and doing some crazy scenario where we somehow double your money in 12 months. I mean, great, but that's not realistic. And so you kind of have to deal with what you've got. And so, if you can live off of your Social Security, well, guess what? You can retire right away. And so it's all about the expenses. And so sometimes for a lot of people, their expenses get less in retirement. Sometimes it gets more, and sometimes it's the expectation. Some people love to travel. Some people love to stay at home. I've had some clients before where they're like, we don't like to travel. And they have plenty of excess money, but they don't love to travel. They just love to be at home and spend time with their family.
Yeah. So the other question that comes from that for a lot of people then is, okay, how do I figure out how much I am going to be spending in retirement? And it's a little bit of a art because nobody knows when they retire and they have a lot more free time. Suddenly they may be spending a lot more than they think. So you have to leave some room for that. But one of the things that we've talked about, we like to help people with, and this is very important for figuring out what your number needs to be in retirement when you look at spending, is going through the process and creating a little bit of a budget, which of course, when most people hear the word budget, I mean, they have, yes, exactly. A lot of people have had a bad experience trying to go through and track every penny for an extended period of time. And they may try it for a couple weeks and then they get bored and they say, okay, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And they throw it out the window. We did last year, and we'll put the link in the description, a video just on budgeting, where we went through step by step a process that is very, very effective in helping someone come up with what they're spending. And it's something that does not take a lot of time. So I encourage you, if you're watching this, you're not sure what your spending is, or you think you're spending too much and you want to budget right, it's a good way to watch that video and implement that. All right. Speaking of retirement, though, one of the things that you have been doing, and you've been with this now for about 8 months, how has that been so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great place to be and work with you and learn and help clients. I mean, it's every day is something fun to do, and I love numbers. I love people. So it's a great place to be.
Yeah, I paid you to say that and be so kind talking about this, right? But it has been awesome having you here, and it's been great because some of the planning that you've been doing, the additional work of tax analysis and looking at strategies like Roth conversions that we've been rolling out for our clients in 2026 has been a really beneficial thing that we've already seen pay off. Let me ask you though, you're having to do a lot of analysis looking at taxes and getting the previous year's tax returns. Do you enjoy doing the tax work? And
it's a lot easier doing the tax planning when you're not the one paying some of those taxes.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
11 kids is very nice from a tax standpoint. So, once they start getting off the payroll, then it'll be a little bit more painful.
That's true, because a lot of it is you're trying to help clients figure out, hey, where can you save taxes, and trying to minimize what you're paying. And you have taken that to what some people might call the extreme. You're up to 11 kids now. That's right. A major tax benefit, right? Have you suggested to any of our clients, listen, one way, because some of them are upset by how much taxes they're paying. Have you suggested that strategy you've done to any of them?
I have. I get a little pushback there.
Really?
Okay. So some of them say, hey, I'm a little too old for this. And I'm like, well, I mean, you're never too old. Never too old. So.
Yes, that's right. I can understand. All right, let's walk us through, and so the audience can kind of hear. And we know, and we'll say with this, that the compliance here, everything we talk about today is educational, not sure anybody's getting smarter listening to us, but in theory. But this is not investment, tax, or legal advice. We're about to walk through a real prospect example, but this is one person's projection. So getting all the compliance out. Talk us through what you've done. This is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so it's one of the things from a planning standpoint. Why do you plan? I mean, go back to the basics. Why do we plan on top of the investments? It's one, it helps dictate how you should have your investments, right? If you have a big purchase that's coming up in 6 months from now, you don't just stick it automatically in the stock market when you can't fully predict the future. And we do the best job we can of predicting, kind of figuring things out, but nobody has a perfect crystal ball. And so the other part of it is, from a planning standpoint, you can plan in a way that reduces your taxes. Now you're taking some hypotheticals, and there's all kinds of elements you're putting into it, but the more you can plan, if I can save you 5-10% of taxes, I mean, that's real money back in your pocket. That's more money to spend, more money to give, whatever that kind of looks like. And so to add that layer and to have that with what we're doing on top of all the investments and market related stuff, it adds tremendous value. And so to be able to look at it, and then when we're starting to do these numbers, I mean, gosh, I mean, we're not talking about $5,000-$10,000 of potential tax savings. We're talking sometimes into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not like a massive exaggeration for a lot of people. They could see that.
Yeah, and we have seen with the plans you've done so far, we have had more than just a handful of clients where we have been able to, project. We'll see what taxes policy does in the future, but project over $100,000 in tax savings, and ultimately that leads to having oftentimes several $100,000 more at the end of the plan. So tell us a little bit about this. And we won't use their real numbers, right, but a couple that came in and had about $2 million in IRAs. Walk us through that step by step, kind of what you did.
Yeah, so we're gonna take an oversimplification, but I've seen this, you've seen this, I mean, tons of times over the years. So client, so hypothetical Bob and Sue, they've got $2 million in their IRA. And so $2 million, but we do the plan and they live pretty modestly in between their Social Security and pensions. Let's say really they only need $1 million to kind of live off of, or that fills the, the two buckets that takes them up for the next 10 years. So the extra $1 million, they don't need it for another 10 plus years. So what do we do with that? Well, let's look and see, make sure we're being as efficient as possible. One, you can take more risk, right? We can talk about that later, but you can take more risk on it because you don't need that money for 10 more years. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, you can do a much better job from a planning standpoint in taxes, mm-hmm, because you can save money. Mm-hmm. So from an oversimplification, so you realize we go into a lot more detail when we actually do our planning. Yeah. But from an oversimplification standpoint, even if we thought, and we could guarantee the tax brackets will stay exactly the same in 10 years from now, which we know won't. Yeah. It will be more complex. It could go up. It could be about the same. It probably won't be less. Yeah. But that $1 million right now, let's say their tax bracket is at 22%. Yeah. That $1 million in 10 years, if they got just a 7.2% return, is now $2 million. Yeah. Okay? Yep. So that same $1 million now is going to be $2 million, which means their taxes, even if they were still at 22%, they're paying double in the taxes for what they're removing out of it, right? Yep. And so it's not that if you take it all at one time, then that's a different story. But it's how do we be strategic about that? Because that growth, that if you can take that full $1 million and actually put it in a Roth where it grows tax-free, all of a sudden that's tax-free growth. And so now you're not paying that additional taxes on that. So you're talking about a couple $100,000 worth of savings of just pure taxes. Yeah. And then hypothetically, again, we see this, it's a hypothetical, but we see this all the time. They get 10 years down the road and they actually are doing really well because the returns might have been actually better than 7.2% return. Sure. And so now they don't need the money. Well, then it keeps on, doubling. Yeah. And so every 10 years it could double, and all of a sudden in 20 years from now, you're talking about that's not just $2 million extra, that's $4 million extra to the heirs or whatever they're looking for. And that could either be tax-free or it could be very taxable.
Yeah, and so what's in that scenario you gave, that second million that was bucket 3, longer term, goes from 1 million to 2 million 10 years later. This couple was hitting the age 75, or will be at that time. Yeah. That is when for them RMDs, required minimum distributions, which back prior to 2019 started at 70 and a half. It got moved into 72. Now currently it's 73 for people reaching that age now, and it'll be 75. That's when you have to start taking money out. The government obviously wants to get its hands on taxes. So in the scenario that we ran, the RMDs at that time, if they don't do anything, they are going to have large amounts they're having to draw out, more than they need. Let's look at those numbers.
So, one, we get this question quite a bit. Our required minimum distribution, kind of what is it and what are the dynamics of it, right?
Yeah.
So the government is, you got to think about this. The government always wants their taxes.
Yes.
And so you got to defer your taxes. You got to deduct it when you made the money. So at some point in time, they come knock and they're like, listen, we need you to remove some of that money so we can get to our taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Sure.
And so the government, in their genius, has a way, instead of doing an even percentage that you pull out, it's kind of like pie. So I had to pull it up because I always think it's kind of funny. So at age 75, you have to withdraw 4.06504065504%
Yes.
out of your IRA
Yes.
based on the 12/31 value of
Yes.
the previous year.
Yes.
So
Now, what if you withhold that by 0.00001%? Are you going to get a knock on the door and audit?
I mean, you might.
Yeah.
It depends who's the auditor.
Yes,
right?
it does.
It depends who's the auditor.
That's exactly right.
So but the government's saying, hey, you got to pull it out.
Yeah.
They made some laws changes recently, but so the penalty is not as much. But it used to be at some point in time severe as 50%. If you didn't take it out,
Yes.
you were going to get charged 50% of what you were supposed to get
Yes.
out.
Yes.
So they're wanting you to take it out. But what it does in like this case, if that extra million had grown to 2.
Yep.
We preserved the first million because we just lived off of kind of the income, quote unquote.
Yep.
They're at $3 million.
Yep.
Okay. So, but they only need, again, per this example, let's say their expenses are more, but they need $75,000 to live off of.
Yeah.
But the government's going to say, hey, based off required minimum distribution of 4 point blah, 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 you've got to take out about $122,000 a year.
Yes.
So you got an extra $50,000 you don't need, but you have to take it out so they can get their taxes.
Yeah.
And that part is what really causes people to have some problems because it forces you, sometimes a portion of that goes into the next tax bracket.
Yep.
And then the bigger thing is at some point in time, it's what they call the widow's tax. That's which we'll talk about more, but you think about it, you're being forced to take out a higher amount than you need, whether you need it or not, and your tax bracket might be half of what the tax bracket was. And so when you're being forced to do that, it's a big difference. And so if you can reduce it by taking that money out earlier, when you have better control, then a lot of it's control. The more control you have over your taxes and kind of things, the better off you are.
And this is very complicated, and from client to client, things can be much different, the advice of what we've seen as we've been going through this. And this is why clients have us to do this, because they do not want to have to dive in and learn all of this. And so it's very cool that you've been able to go through this. A lot of clients that we've done this for so far have really appreciated it, and it has made a big, big difference to many of them by cutting the taxes they're going to pay in the future and adding more into their accounts at the end. All right, now the next segment here for us to talk through. I heard that we have some recent client questions. Is that right?
We do.
Okay.
Lots of client questions. I might have a question myself here or there.
Okay, all right.
But the biggest question right now, it was the silver question, by the way. Now that I think that's squashed.
Yes.
So now the next one is SpaceX.
Have you seen, I've got to tell you about SpaceX. The excitement and the interest for this is off the charts.
It's crazy.
The amount of time that we're hearing about this from clients. So I started 1998 at Merrill Lynch at that time. A lot of IPOs happening in 98, 99, early 2000, leading into the dot-com bubble, right? And then as we've seen over the years since, there have been a lot of big companies that have gone public. I can't remember there being one that had this much excitement and intrigue for people as SpaceX is. And, obviously part of it is Elon Musk. And, he is a controversial figure in a way, but the success that he had at Tesla, shareholders doing so well, I think that has made this interesting. The fact we're talking about space, has made it interesting. But what a lot of people don't know is that SpaceX right now, their primary business is their Starlink internet. That is, where most of their revenue is coming from now. There's a lot of hopes of the company in the future. But, talking about this IPO, our approach right now is buyer beware, because oftentimes when these companies go public and start trading, that opening day, the shares open much, much higher than what the official IPO price was. And history has said, Barron's had a piece on this last weekend that basically went back to 1980 and said most of these big IPOs, over the first 3 years, on average, they dropped by 45%. Now, that's not all the companies, and for all we know, SpaceX will do really well, but a lot of companies like Meta, very successful company that's gone up a lot, if you bought that 6 months in, you actually have done much, much better than if you bought it that opening day, because there was a lot of hype. And then in that 6-month period, all the insiders, the workers who have had their shares, they now get to cash in and they're selling. So you have that selling pressure. So we're going to hear a lot about SpaceX from our clients asking us, but I do think it's something you've got to be very careful with. Yeah, based on that.
So their valuation right now, the IPO is what, $1.5 trillion?
Yeah, that's what they're aiming for. $1.5 to $2 trillion. That's the range.
5-6 years ago, that would be the largest company.
Yes.
I mean, it was Apple finally hit $1 trillion back in 2020, 2019.
Yep.
So to me, I mean, listen, you're the market expert, but the IPOs that are happening nowadays is very different than it was 20, 30 years ago, where a lot of people there'd be small companies worth, maybe $1 billion, $2 billion, and they would IPO to help raise money to kind of go. Now there's so much fundraising and so much valuation that's done prior that a lot of it is these people are just trying to cash out.
Yep.
And it's gone so much later in the process too. And so that's why we have that, talked about some of that pressure. You have a lot of people that said, hey, I've owned this for 10 years. As great as SpaceX is going to do, or they think it could do, you're ready to cash out.
Yeah.
And that causes, when you have a $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion, we just think about that. You got to sit back and observe it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great point. You're exactly right. A lot, because we also this summer are going to have Anthropic, which of course is the makers of Claude, and OpenAI, which ChatGPT. So that's 3 huge monster IPOs. All the companies are growing fast, so there's going to be a lot of excitement. But you're right. In the past, these companies would have come public a year, 2 years ago, and wouldn't have had valuations of $1 trillion, $1.5, $2 trillion. So it is something clients got to be very careful with.
Yeah. So speaking of large numbers, inflation.
Oh, yes.
So that would be the other question is, and this is always something when you hear it in the news, hey, inflation's going up, it's creeping up, especially, a few years ago when we were seeing outrageous inflation.
Yes.
Well, we're seeing the numbers again, the inflation's going up.
Yep.
Are we going to get back to inflation of the 70s?
Yeah, that's, and we've heard that from a couple clients asking that. I don't think so. To me, are some huge differences. First of all, 4 or 5 years ago, in that post-COVID period, you had a situation of the government spending trillions and trillions more than they were. You had real estate soaring in value. You had wages going up very fast. You had a 9% increase in Social Security, food costs soaring. Pretty much everything was going up. And that's kind of what happened for a lot of the 70s. This time around, inflation was under control. Now, a lot of people get a little bit confused because they say, hey, everything's still far more expensive than it used to be. What do you mean under control? We're never going back, unfortunately, to where prices were pre-COVID. So what the Fed was trying to do is slow future price increases back to close to 2%, right? So the fact is we were kind of there. Inflation was very close to 2%. The conflict in the Middle East is what spiked it here, because oil going up over $100 a barrel, that is the main factor driving inflation right now. Much different than the 70s when it was chronic price increases here. This is acute. When this conflict ends, oil will come back down. Don't know if it'll get back down to $57 a barrel quickly, but it's not going to stay up near $100. So I think inflation will cool back off as we get later in the year. I don't think this is comparable really in any way to the 70s.
So that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, is it mostly equatable to the oil and gas, and so then the conflict in the Middle East? So that makes a lot of sense. It makes you feel both more in control of what's going on,
yeah,
and also a little bit less because wars, you can't always predict that. But
yes.
Also, that's one thing that you're having to kind of control versus so many other things that's coming towards the inflation number.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Question: Duke or North Carolina?
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Well, here's the thing. My family moved up to Raleigh, North Carolina when I was 7 years old, and our church met on campus of NC State, the Wolfpack. And so I started becoming a huge fan, and we moved away in 1989, came down to Atlanta. I stayed an NC State fan. The problem is, up in that area, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, you have Duke and North Carolina. Those are the two teams everybody thinks of because they both won tons of championships. NC State, meanwhile, has had virtually no success at all. Up until a couple years ago, they made a miracle run to the Final Four in college basketball. I actually did a market update wearing an NC State t-shirt. Of course, had to have a jacket with it, but that was my only real celebration. So, yeah, man, North Carolina is our hated rival. Duke is in the middle. I don't mind Duke as much. Want nothing to do with UNC. Yes. Good question. Good question there, man.
All right. And then we did have multiple people asked, who taught you how to dance?
All right. Listen. There, I have had that. First of all, I had no idea this was a luau we did, client appreciation event, and we did not. I had no clue that the entertainment was going to call audience members up there, not once but twice. A lot of our clients were not excited about going up and dancing. So I ended up being called out there.
Man of the people right here.
Yes.
Man of the people.
Well, and you came, Krista came. But let me tell you, that what you just saw there, that was not me goofing around. That was literally the best I have. I have been fired by 2 different dance instructors, and I kid you not. We got married, my wife and I, almost 25 years ago. She, romantic, loved dancing, said, let's take dance lessons. We did. 3-4 weeks in, the instructor comes and says, listen, Will, you literally have not picked up a single thing that we've covered in any of the meetings. Lessons, I can't help you. There's nothing I can do. That was it. I was let go. And then about 2 years later, I worked at Wells Fargo. One of my sales guys that I hired, he was a sauce and steel. Oh, he was as good as it gets. My wife was super excited. He came to our house, started giving lessons. 4 weeks in, Will, this just isn't for you, buddy. I'm hopeless. I'm giving up hope that you can get this. I was let go again. So 2 different times I said, that's the end of my dancing career. And then, of course, had to get called out in front of all clients and dance. So that's the best that I had.
A man of the people.
Yes.
We really do appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I will try not to learn anything from you.
Yes, exactly.
And my wife says thank you.
That's right. Absolutely. Take nothing from him. Well, listen, that's I think it for today. We want to let people go.
But if you guys have questions you'd like us to answer, drop them. We'd love to answer them and talk through them, and no matter how crazy they are, we'll try to see if we can address them.
That's right. Drop your comments. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching. Take care.